2026 is stacked with huge movies, but even some of the most anticipated films of the year probably won't make it through their box office runs unscathed. These are our predictions for the biggest duds of the year. Live-action Street Fighter movies have never been box office gold. Even when they make money, they're not like solid gold. The 1994 Van Damme movie made a profit, but it starred Van Damme at the peak of his young fame, so that was a reasonably expected outcome.
You have made me a happy man.
Next, I'll make you a dead one.
2009 Street Fighter The Legend of Chun-Li, meanwhile, sank like it'd been hit in the chin by a Kiko can. So let's talk 2026. This is shaping up to be the weirdest lineup for a Street Fighter movie imaginable, except for Andrew Koji as Ryu. That's fine, but from there, you've got Netflix's personal national treasure, Noah Centineo as Ken, David DeSmallchin as Master Bison, and Jason Momoa as Blanca, which, okay, that one's not bad either. It's all helmed by the principal director for the Eric Andre Show, so as weird as you think it's going to be weirder. There might even be wrench. But will there be success? We're not counting on it. We fully expect this one to go down as a cult favorite, maybe, but not a box office juggernaut. There was a time long ago when betting against a Star Wars movie was a dumb thing to do. That time has passed. Star Wars is in dire need of a hero to bring it back to its former glory, and that hero, unfortunately, won't be The Mandalorian and Grogu. 2 seasons of The Mandalorian cemented it as a hit with fans who'd been maybe a little disillusioned with Star Wars for a while, but by the time the 3rd season of the Disney Plus show rolled around, interest was waning. Then Disney waited 3 years to culminate that story in a theatrical film, and at this point, it's lost whatever momentum it once had. Also, let's face it, not every casual Star Wars fan wants to watch 3 seasons of a show just to enjoy a movie. Some of us have to work in the morning. Reportedly, Din Djarin and his fuzzy little friend are reaching us on a budget of about $166 million. Peanuts compared to other Star Wars films, but still a high bar to clear for a tentpole whose announcement was met with a resounding In 2023, Megan came after audiences' money like a dance-obsessed murder bot. With a slim budget and a playful sense of horror, it was primed to sweep a slow winter box office, which it did, paving the way for the return of the TikTok Terminator a few years later. And Megan 2.0 went for broke. It turned the original's horror premise into a comedy action film that, to its credit, knew exactly what it was: a campy sci-fi crowd-pleaser built on what amounted to 1 million TikTok memes.
You threatened to rip out my tongue and put me in a wheelchair.
I was upset.
Unfortunately, in doing so, it really did go for broke. Maybe it alienated its original audience, or maybe it was just weighed down by a budget more than twice that of the original. Maybe it was the CGI face. But for whatever reason, it bombed. Which brings us to Soulmate, a spin-off that, again, does an about-face on tone. This one's an erotic thriller set in the same universe as Megan, but otherwise more or less its own thing. And at this point, we just don't see any of the draw that made the original capture lightning in a bottle. On that gut feeling alone, it could have still had a chance. But the nail in the coffin came when Universal unceremoniously pulled Soulmate from its January 9th release slot on December 16th, 2025. It doesn't sound like the studio has a lot of faith in the film, and frankly, neither do we. Just to clarify real quick, just because we think a movie is going to bomb doesn't mean we hope it's going to bomb. Return to Silent Hill is a sequel to 2006's Silent Hill, which didn't do too shabby at the box office, and has since gone on to be something of a cult favorite. There was a terrible sequel in 2012, but since then the film franchise adaptations of the games have been quietly moldering into Luca Graveyard. For fans, there's a fair amount of hype for Return to Silent Hill. Christoph Gans, who directed the original and is a passionate fan of the universe, is back in the director's chair. It's an adaptation of 2001's Silent Hill 2, probably one of the best survival horror games of all time, and it's a story with staying power. The 2024 remake of Silent Hill 2 sold more than 2 million copies in just a few months. Sorry about all the boring numbers. The point is, plenty of people like this thing. But, and here's the but, we just don't have high hopes for box office success. This movie will definitely get some views when it hits streaming, but it's still a sequel to a relatively niche horror property, which isn't likely to draw huge numbers of general audiences. It's also not the best timing. Its January 23rd release puts it up against the second weekend for 28 years later, The Bone Temple, and a week before Sam Raimi's Send Help. Hate to say it, but we predict that crowded horror marquee will dilute Return to Silent Hill's potential profits. Directed by and starring Mark Fishback, aka Markiplier, Iron Lung feels more like a gimmick than a legitimate horror movie. We could be wrong. It has an intriguing post-apocalyptic premise based on an indie game of the same name, which has its fans as well as its critics. It's an interesting choice for a film adaptation, to say the least, but it makes sense from a budget standpoint. Most of the game is set inside a single small submarine. There's no official report on the movie's budget as of this video, but it can't be a lot. It's that presumed low budget that may just save it when its January 30th release date rolls around. If every single one of Markiplier's 38 million subscribers buys a ticket, Iron Lung will be a huge success. If half of those go to see it, it'll be a huge success. Outside of that sphere, though, there hasn't been enough marketing or exposure to make general audiences do any more than say, wonder what that is, when they see the title in their upcoming showtimes before they buy a ticket for a different movie. Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die is a manic dystopian action comedy starring Sam Rockwell, which either is your cup of tea or isn't.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. You're in for a really weird night.
It's also Gore Verbinski's first film since 2016, which on its own is good enough for a lot of people. To dig up ancient history, this is a guy who directed the first 3 Pirates of the Caribbean movies, not to mention The Ring and Rango. On the flip side of that, he's also the guy who directed The Lone Ranger and A Cure for Wellness, 2 consecutive bombs that, until now, dragged his career to a standstill for almost a decade. The good news is that Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die had a festival premiere in 2025 that led to pretty glowing reviews, amping up the movie's feverish insanity. Will that be enough for an R-rated, high-concept sci-fi comedy to pull a profit? Yeah, we're gonna go with no. Like A Cure for Wellness, nothing about Good Luck is playing it safe. That may end up being its saving grace as far as simply being a fun movie, but might also be the exact thing that poisons its mass appeal. Reports have been trickling out for a while now that Brendan Fraser and Rachel Weisz might be returning for a Mummy sequel.
Brendan Fraser returning to the Mummy franchise?
Okay, cough once for yes, twice for no.
Exactly. Exactly.
Well, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a different Mummy movie. Confused? It's understandable. The Mummy releasing on April 17th comes from director Lee Cronin, which is supposed to be a more horror-driven approach and stars Jack Rayner, who you might know as one of the 6 or so vaguely similar-looking people in Midsommar. Muddying the waters even more is that in November 2025, reports came out that the name of the movie was changing to The Resurrected, supposedly in an attempt to distance it from Universal's 2017 Mummy and presumably the Fraser-led films. So what does that leave us with? Who the heck knows? Cronin's last movie, Evil Dead Rise, made box office bank, but it also didn't try to hide the fact that it was, an Evil Dead movie. We just have a feeling that Cronin's The Mummy is going to be a victim of its own convoluted marketing. Look, we all want to see a big-budget Masters of the Universe tear up the box office. It's time for He-Man to shine. Yeah, that right there. That's an unabashedly goofy awesomeness. It's verging on 40 years since anybody touched Masters of the Universe in live action, and by all accounts, the 2026 film is approaching it the right way. They've got a hunky somebody in the lead role, a big focus on fight choreography, and an enormous sword. It's got Travis Knight as a director, who showed he knows what fans of 80s things want with that Cybertron opening in Bumblebee. It all sounds great, but it's going to be an uphill battle for Prince Adam to defeat the Skeletor of breaking even. For starters, it has an estimated budget of $170 million to $200 million. That's more than Mandalorian and Grogu, for anyone keeping track. It's also hitting theaters right in between Mando, Toy Story 5, and Supergirl, giving it just a brief window to get a foothold with audiences. At the end of the day, our fingers are crossed, but we're not holding our breath. Something tells us Coyote vs. Acme imitates real life just a little too much for Warner Brothers' liking. The plot of the movie is Wile E. Coyote sues Acme because none of their products ever work for him. It's an intriguing premise, along with the Space Jam-style live-action meets animation approach. But here's the real-life twist. This movie's been in the works in some way or another since around 2018 and started filming in 2022. Then Warner Brothers pulled the rug out from under it, figuring they could make their money back by just claiming selling the whole thing as a tax write-off. That was a mistake. As soon as people got wind that Warner Brothers was dropping an anvil on the Coyote's big screen outing, public pushback began in earnest. Even the movie's human star, Will Forte, and director Dave Green commented publicly about their disappointment. Long story short, the movie was bought by a new distributor, and it's finally scheduled to come out on August 28, 2026. And while I would like to think that after such a long journey it's going to pull in enough receipts to make it worth it, it's just not the type of movie that's destined to rule the box office, especially if that reported $70 million budget is accurate. It's hard for a basic comedy to bomb. They aren't usually expensive to make, and they tend to be pretty consistent crowd pleasers. The Meet the Parents movies tick the latter box, but they are surprisingly expensive movies. And sure, the other three films were box office darlings, even as the budget crept up for each consecutive one. 2010's Little Fockers, for example, cost a reported $100 million, but came out in the black with a $300 million+ box office run. But is that magic still there 16 years after that? And 26 years after Meet the Parents? This is one of the riskier bets here, but we don't think so. At this point, these movies have nipples, and you know what they say?
Oh yeah, you can milk anything with nipples.
But even the most well-fed cats run out of milk eventually. There's no announced budget for Focker In-Law yet, but the entire original cast is coming back, including Owen Wilson, plus Ariana Grande, and these folks don't come cheap. That has to be where the budgets for these movies are going, right? Either that or money laundering. Just kidding! Just kidding. Let's see, Universal, Paramount, and DreamWorks. Jeez, okay, strike that line. Either way, we just don't see Focker In-Law joining the blockbuster family on November 25th.